It was just past 7 on a Thursday evening in Savannah, Georgia. The kind of evening that hummed with stillness, cicadas droning in the distance, the golden hour sun stretching long shadows across freshly trimmed lawns, and the smell of someone grilling somewhere down the street. Richard Hale pulled into the circular driveway of his estate, the tires of his black SUV crunching lightly over the smooth gravel. The modern glass and stone house ahead of him glowed softly, like it had been waiting all day for him to come home. Everything was pristine, curated, predictable, just the way Richard liked it. He stepped out of the vehicle, loosened his collar, and walked up the stone steps toward the large oak door. His mind was already on the emails he'd need to answer before bed and the investor meeting at dawn. He reached for the polished brass handle, barely brushing it with his fingers. Then he heard it. "Don't go in there." The voice cut through the warm air like a sudden gust of cold wind, sharp, urgent, childlike. Richard froze, his hand hovering midair. He turned, startled. A boy, barefoot, filthy, and no more than 7 or 8, was sprinting toward him from across the lawn. His clothes were torn and smeared with dirt and grease, and a too big, sun-bleached yellow beanie clung to his head like a second skin. His chest heaved as he ran, waving both arms in the air like flags in distress. "Please, mister," the boy gasped when he reached the steps, nearly tripping on the edge of the porch. "Don't open the door. There's something bad inside." Richard stared at him. He was too stunned to respond right away. The first instinct was suspicion. Was this some kind of trick, a distraction for a robbery? But there was something in the boy's voice, something raw and desperate. Not rehearsed, not manipulative, just real fear. "You're trespassing," Richard finally said, his voice cold but measured. "Who are you?" The boy swallowed hard and clutched the hem of his shirt. "Micah," he whispered. "I sleep back there, behind your trash bins. I saw 2 men go in last night. I heard them talking. They were doing something in your kitchen, something with the gas." Richard felt a chill rise up his spine. The boy's words didn't make sense, not yet, but they weren't easy to dismiss either. He hesitated for a second, then pulled his phone from his pocket and dialed 911. "There may have been a break-in," he told the dispatcher, "and I think there might be a gas leak." Within minutes, emergency responders swarmed the property. Fire trucks, flashing lights, and stern voices replaced the quiet calm of the street. The fire chief, a gruff, no-nonsense man, emerged from the house, helmet under his arm. "You're lucky, Mr. Hale," he said. "Someone tampered with the gas line behind your stove. Slow leak. If you'd gone in and closed the door behind you, the concentration would have knocked you out in minutes. Could have been fatal." Richard didn't say anything. He just turned and looked at Micah, who now sat quietly on the edge of the porch, hugging his knees. The yellow beanie had slipped off his head and sat crumpled in his lap. How had this boy, this forgotten child, known to warn him? And more importantly, why had he cared? If this story already has you hooked, don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. Let's keep spreading kindness, one story at a time. Richard stood in his foyer long after the last of the sirens faded. The lights from the fire trucks had painted the inside of the house in urgent red flashes, now replaced by the soft amber of recessed ceiling fixtures. The air still smelled faintly of burnt metal and something chemical, something wrong. The house was intact, clean, safe. But he wasn't. He looked toward the boy again. Micah hadn't moved. He was still on the edge of the porch steps, knees pulled to his chest, arms wrapped around them, yellow beanie clutched tightly in one hand like it was the only thing keeping him from blowing away. Richard stepped outside slowly. The boy glanced up but didn't flinch, just waited. "Why would you help me?" Richard asked. His voice wasn't angry, not cold this time, just quiet, confused. Micah shrugged one shoulder, then looked down at his feet. "I saw you in a newspaper once," he said. "You gave money to Horizon House. That's where I was, before it closed down." Richard blinked. "Horizon House?" "Yeah, the one in Midtown. The paper said you were helping kids like me. I thought, I don't know, maybe you were nice." The words hit like a stone to the gut. Richard remembered the photo. He was standing in front of a comically large check, flanked by a building director whose name he'd already forgotten. He'd been told the shelter needed a facelift, some food donations, a Wi-Fi router. He'd written the check, shaken hands, smiled for the camera, and never gone back. PR had needed it. His name had been in the news for layoffs that week. It had been nothing more than damage control. But this boy remembered. clung to that photo like it meant something real. "You live back there?" Richard asked, nodding toward the hedges by the side gate. "Yeah," Micah said, "behind the bins. It's warm near the vents, and no one looks back there." He said it so plainly, like describing a treehouse or a secret fort, not a hiding place behind a trash pile. "And you saw two men break in?" Micah nodded, looking up briefly now. One had a flashlight, the other had a bag with tools. They were messing with the pipes under your counter. One of them said, he hesitated. "What did he say?" Richard asked gently. Micah licked his dry lips. He said, "Let's see if a rich man can breathe money." Then they laughed. Richard exhaled, slow and shallow. Something tightened in his chest, and it wasn't fear exactly. It was older than that, something he'd kept buried. His mind drifted where he didn't want it to go. Evan. His brother had been like this boy once, angry, lost, unkempt, brilliant in ways that were hard to explain to anyone outside the family. But Richard had chosen not to look too closely. They had tried rehab. They had tried cutting him off. And in the end, they tried forgetting. When the call came that Evan had died behind a gas station in Charleston, no one in the family cried. They just nodded, like they'd already rehearsed that version of reality 100 times. Now, here was this boy, this forgotten child, sitting on his porch with dirt under his fingernails and the same hollow fire in his eyes that Evan once had. Richard sat down slowly beside him. "You didn't have to warn me." Micah didn't answer. He just looked out at the darkened yard. "I mean it," Richard said. "You could have walked away, and no one would have blamed you." "I would have blamed me," Micah said softly. They sat in silence. Richard's phone buzzed. A text from his head of security. "Perimeter scans clear. No signs of forced entry. Gas valve tampered manually. Working with police." He didn't answer. He slipped the phone back into his pocket and leaned his elbows on his knees. "How long have you been out here?" he asked. Micah shrugged. "Few weeks. Maybe longer. I don't count good." "And before that?" "Couple houses. One had bugs, one locked me in, so I left." "They locked you in?" "Room had a padlock on the outside," Micah said simply, like that detail didn't even need explanation. Richard felt a sickness stir in his stomach. Not from anything he ate, from something deeper, something moral. He looked over at Micah, who now toyed with a loose thread on his pants. "What's in the beanie?" Richard asked gently. Micah looked down and smiled just a little. "My treasure," he said. "Got a crumpled cracker, a photo of my mom from when she still looked like a mom, and the paper with your picture on it." Richard almost smiled, but it was tinged with shame. "You kept a photo of me?" Micah nodded. "You looked important, but not mean." That simple observation stung more than it should have, because Micah had no way of knowing that Richard hadn't been inside Horizon House more than 5 minutes. He hadn't spoken to a single kid. He'd shaken the hand of the director, taken the photo, and left before the cookies were even served. "Why did you leave the shelter?" Richard asked. "They closed it down, said funding dried up. Some kids got moved. I didn't want to go where they told me, so I ran." "Do you know where your mom is?" "Nope. Last time I saw her, she said she'd be back in a few days. That was months ago." He said it so evenly that it caught Richard off guard. No self-pity, no drama, just a statement of fact. Micah hugged his knees tighter. "You're not going to call anyone, are you?" he asked, without looking at Richard. "What do you mean?" "I mean, I know how this goes. You give me a sandwich, then you call some lady, and I go live with strangers again." "I haven't decided anything," Richard said. "I just wanted to warn you. I didn't mean to mess things up." "You didn't mess anything up," Richard said quietly. "You saved my life." Micah shrugged, unconvinced. The porch light flickered softly above them. Somewhere down the road, a dog barked once and went quiet again. Richard's neighborhood was the kind where nothing unexpected ever happened. Until tonight. "I'm not going to send you anywhere," Richard said after a long pause. "At least not tonight." Micah looked up. "You can stay. There's a guest room. It has clean sheets and a nightlight, if you want." Micah stared at him like he was speaking another language. Then slowly, cautiously, he nodded. "I guess I could stay one night." "One night," Richard agreed, though they both knew it meant more than that. He stood and opened the door again, this time with no danger behind it. He motioned for Micah to follow. The boy rose slowly, gripping his beanie and the crumpled paper like shields. As he stepped inside, Richard watched him look around with wide eyes. The boy didn't seem afraid of the space, just stunned by it. The warmth, the lights, the smell of lemon-scented polish, and something that had once been garlic bread. Micah didn't speak, but his silence was full. And Richard, he felt something shift inside him, a recognition, a shame, and maybe, for the first time in a long while, a sense of responsibility that couldn't be bought with a donation or fixed with a press release. He didn't know what came next, but he knew one thing for certain: he couldn't let this boy disappear. Not like Evan. Not again. The guest room was small by Richard's standards, just a twin bed, a dresser, and a reading lamp that gave off a soft amber glow. But to Micah, it looked like a palace. He stood in the doorway, yellow hat in hand, staring at the neatly folded towels on the end of the bed, like he didn't know if he was allowed to touch them. Richard crouched beside him and pointed to the bathroom down the hall. "Shower's all yours. I'll leave a clean shirt outside the door. It might be a little big, but it's soft." Micah nodded, eyes wide, still silent. He stepped inside and Richard closed the door behind him, resisting the urge to say something like, "Take your time," or "You're safe here." The boy had probably heard 100 promises like that, none of them kept. In the kitchen, Richard heated up a bowl of leftover pasta and placed it on the counter beside a chilled bottle of spring water. When Micah reappeared 15 minutes later, barefoot, wearing one of Richard's old flannel shirts that hung off him like a blanket, he looked cleaner, but still carried the same guarded weight in his eyes. Micah eyed the food and took the seat only after Richard motioned for him to sit. He ate slowly at first, then faster, like his body couldn't help itself. When he was halfway through, he paused. "There's no more gas, right?" he asked, voice low. Richard shook his head. "They turned it off. House is safe." Micah nodded and kept eating, more relaxed now. Richard leaned against the kitchen counter, watching. "So," he asked gently, "how long were you at Horizon House?" Micah shrugged, chewing. "Couple years, before they shut it down. That was before Mom left." "What happened to her?" "She said she'd be back after she found work." He wiped his mouth with the sleeve of the flannel. "That was a while ago." Richard didn't press. The boy spoke in time-measured silence, where pain was too deep for details. "They put me in foster care after that," Micah added, his voice quieter now. 3 homes. The last one had locks on the bedroom door, from the outside. Richard's stomach clenched. "So you ran?" Micah nodded. Didn't seem like anyone noticed. He took another bite and looked down at the beanie beside him. "I always keep this close. Mom knitted it when I was little. It's all I got left." Richard stared at the hat, faded, frayed, a little crooked. It might as well have been a crown. "You still believe in people?" he asked softly. Micah looked up. "Sometimes, I guess. I mean, I saw you in that picture. Thought you might be good." He added quickly, "Even if you forgot us after." The words landed without venom, just a child's observation, honest, undeniable. That night, after he tucked Micah into the guest bed and cracked the door just enough for the nightlight to spill through, Richard sat alone in his office. The house was quiet. Too quiet. It hadn't bothered him before. He opened his laptop and pulled up the estate's security footage. Micah had been telling the truth. The boy had been there. The cameras near the side gate showed him crouched in the bushes, peeking over the fence, watching the 2 intruders enter through the back. One of them walked with a limp. The other kept glancing over his shoulder, paranoid. Richard paused the video and zoomed in on a face. It looked familiar. He dug into his company files, the archived complaint forms from redevelopment projects over the past few years. One folder was marked, "Southside Evictions Closed." Inside were scanned letters, most dismissed without reply. One name jumped out, Victor Langston, former construction foreman. Had worked on the earliest Whittech housing projects. Laid off after the downtown expansion. Had filed a grievance. Wrongful displacement, loss of home, loss of custody. There it was. A scanned photo of a man with tired eyes and a scar under his right cheekbone. Richard recognized the face. The man in the security footage, the one who had almost killed him. He sat back, heart pounding. Not from fear, from something worse. He remembered the meeting vaguely. Victor had shown up at the company lobby once, yelling. Security had escorted him out. Richard hadn't even read the letter he'd written. It had been marked non-urgent and buried. How many others like him were out there? And how many had he never even looked in the eye? Down the hall, Micah slept, curled around the pillow like he was still bracing for someone to shake him awake and tell him to move along. He looked peaceful now, but Richard knew better. That kind of sleep was borrowed. The next morning, before the sun rose, Richard sent 2 emails, one to his lawyer and one to a child advocacy investigator he'd used during a legal case years ago. He kept the message simple. Find everything you can on Victor Langston and start the paperwork. I want a petition for temporary guardianship of a child named Micah. He paused before hitting send. He wasn't sure he was the kind of man who should be responsible for anyone. He'd failed his own brother, watched from a distance as Evan unraveled, sent money when it was too late, showed up to the funeral only because his mother insisted. But Micah wasn't Evan. And maybe this was his second chance, not to undo the past, but to choose better in the present. That afternoon, Micah sat on the edge of the backyard porch, tracing patterns into the dirt with a stick. Richard brought him a sandwich and sat down beside him. I made some calls, he said. We're going to try to get you placed somewhere safe. Micah looked up, alarmed. I thought you said I didn't have to go. You don't. Not unless you want to. I mean, I was thinking you could stay here for longer. Micah blinked, unsure whether to believe it. I don't want to be trouble, he mumbled. You're not. I don't want to go if I don't belong. Richard looked at him. You belong where someone sees you. The boy didn't respond, but his shoulders loosened. Later that evening, as they watched a nature documentary from the couch, something about elephants and the way they remember kindness, Micah leaned his head against Richard's shoulder, quietly. He didn't say a word. He didn't have to. The meeting took place 2 days later on the porch of a sun-bleached duplex behind an auto shop just off Route 17. The house looked tired, paint peeling, a sagging screen door, plastic patio chairs half buried in leaves. But it was where the name had led him. Victor Langston. Richard stepped out of his car, dressed not in his usual pressed button-down and slacks, but jeans and a flannel shirt. Something more human, something less performative. He climbed the steps slowly, not sure if the ache in his chest was from nerves or guilt. Victor was already outside, seated in a folding chair, a steaming mug in his hand. He looked older than the security footage suggested. Not in years, but in weight, like disappointment had calcified into his bones. Richard cleared his throat. Mr. Langston? Victor didn't move for a long second. Then he looked up slowly, squinting at the man in front of him. A flicker of recognition lit his face, then something sharper. Anger, resentment, weariness. You're a long way from glass towers and valet parking, Mr. Hale, Victor said, voice gravelly but even. I came to talk. You came to ease your conscience. Maybe, Richard admitted, but mostly I came to say, you were right. Victor raised an eyebrow. That's so. I never read your letter, Richard said quietly. Not until 2 nights ago. It was marked as non-urgent, filed away. I was too busy succeeding. Victor's jaw tightened. You took everything, then forgot my name. I did. Victor stared at him, then took a slow sip of his coffee. You think words fix eviction? Think they bring back the nights my son and I slept in the back of a Ford with the heater broken? No, I don't. Then why are you here? Because a boy I didn't know, Micah, waited 12 hours in the cold just to warn me. Because he remembered my face from a photo I didn't even remember taking. Because he believed I was someone worth saving. And I wasn't. But I want to be. Victor didn't speak. Richard continued. I want to start something. I'm calling it the Second Wind Project. Not just charity, real rebuilding. Affordable housing, job training, legal advocacy, but not led by me, led by people like you. People who know the cost of being invisible. Victor stared at him. You offering me a handout? I'm offering you a seat at the table. You're serious? I am. Victor studied him for a long time, then leaned back in his chair. My son won't talk to me, he said finally. He's in foster care now. Says I failed him. That I disappeared. Richard nodded slowly. I know that story. Victor's eyes narrowed. Do you? My brother, Evan. We lost him because I thought sending money was enough. I thought avoiding pain meant I didn't have to feel it. I was wrong. Victor looked down into his coffee cup. You get one shot, Hale. That's all I need. They sat in silence for a while. Two men who had both failed people they loved. Both old enough to know that apologies didn't always buy forgiveness, but young enough to hope that maybe, just maybe, trying still mattered. When Richard left that porch, the paperwork for the Second Wind project was already in motion. By the end of the week, Micah stood next to Richard in a small downtown office as a judge signed the final papers. Temporary guardianship granted. The boy didn't say much, just clutched his yellow beanie tighter and tried not to smile too hard. That night, Richard found Micah sitting on the back porch steps watching the sky turn purple behind the trees. You okay? He asked. Micah nodded. I just don't want to mess it up. You won't. What if you change your mind? I won't. The boy turned to him, hesitant. Why me? Richard took a breath. Because you reminded me who I was supposed to be. Micah looked back at the stars. I wasn't trying to change anything. I just remembered your picture. Thought, if it was really you, maybe you'd listen. Richard swallowed the lump in his throat. I'm listening now. And he was. For the first time in years, Richard Hale wasn't building a future for investors or for a headline. He was building something real, with people he used to overlook, with those who had every reason to turn their backs, but chose instead to show up. Victor became a central voice in the Second Wind initiative. He brought plans, ideas, frustrations, and names of those who had fallen through the cracks. He helped reimagine housing projects with dignity in mind. Porches instead of gates, childcare centers on site, corner stores that accepted SNAP, not just gourmet markets for appearances. People don't want to be saved, Victor said during one of their first planning sessions. They just want to be seen and respected. Richard wrote it on the whiteboard. Micah, too, became a quiet force behind it all. He helped organize donated books for the new community center library, passed out paintbrushes to volunteers, and reminded everyone that sometimes the smallest voice has the sharpest truth. Do you know, Richard said one afternoon, that none of this would have happened if you hadn't shouted that night? Micah tilted his head. I just didn't want you to die. That's exactly what makes it matter, Richard replied. You did the right thing, not because you had to, but because you could. The twist in all of this wasn't dramatic. It was subtle, human. The twist was that the child no one noticed changed everything, not with power or wealth, but with instinct and courage and the quiet belief that even strangers deserve to be safe. He didn't ask for reward, didn't expect applause. He just remembered a photo, a face, a name, and he chose to act. That was the kind of twist life didn't often offer, but when it did, it rewrote the entire story. 6 weeks later, the new Horizon House reopened beneath a bright spring sky. A modest building nestled between trees and sidewalks, it bore no grand archways or soaring banners, just soft-colored paint, a shaded courtyard, and laughter drifting from open windows. But something had changed. Over the entrance to the new East Wing hung a bronze plaque etched with gentle lettering, "The Micah Hale Wing, for the ones who were never meant to be forgotten." Micah stood beside Richard as the ribbon was cut. He didn't say much, just held onto a juice cup and stared at the plaque like it was something both too big and too personal to believe. His name, his story, a part of something that would outlast him. Inside, children were already settling into reading corners and play spaces. Social workers passed out crayons and notebooks. A bookshelf lined one wall, and on the top shelf sat a small photo frame. A boy in a yellow knit beanie, smiling just slightly. Victor was there too, clean-shaven in a navy jacket, his teenage son, Caleb, standing a little awkwardly at his side. The reunion had been quiet, no hugs, just an extended silence and a cracked, unsteady, "Hey, Dad." But they stood together now. Caleb had come. That was enough. Later that week, Richard took Micah to a small city park not far from Midtown. They sat on a bench near a broken fountain, sharing a bag of peanuts while kids played tag nearby. Then, Micah froze. His eyes locked on a woman sitting beneath a tree across the field, a guitar in her lap, long sleeves pulled over her hands, singing softly to no one in particular. "That's her," Micah whispered. Richard followed his gaze. "Are you sure?" "I remember her hands," the boy said. "She used to sing when she braided my hair." Richard didn't speak. He just sat beside him, waiting. Micah didn't move for a long time. Then, without a word, he stood and walked across the field. Richard watched from the bench as the woman looked up, startled. The guitar slid off her lap, her hand flew to her mouth, and then, trembling, she reached for him. Micah stepped into her arms, burying his face in her chest like he was 4 years old again. They didn't speak, not at first, but you didn't need words to feel it. How hard they both cried. When Micah returned, his eyes were wet, but his smile was real. "She's been clean for 6 months," he said. "She thought if she came back, she'd ruin me." Richard nodded gently. "Do you want to see her again?" "Yeah," Micah said, gripping the yellow hat in both hands, "but I still want to live with you." "You're allowed to have both," Richard said. 2 days later, in a small county courthouse with little fanfare, the adoption was made official. Micah Hale. It was just a signature on a form, a few stamped documents. But to Richard, it felt heavier than any contract he'd ever signed. That night, back at the house, Micah wandered into Richard's study holding the yellow beanie. "I want you to have this," he said. Richard blinked. "Micah, are you sure?" The boy nodded. "I used to wear it to feel like someone who mattered, but now I know I do, so I don't need it anymore." Richard took the beanie in both hands like it was gold. "You've always mattered," he said quietly. "You just needed someone to say it out loud." Micah smiled, crooked, shy, but honest. Before bed, he added a new photo to his treasure box. This one showed the two of them sitting side by side on the porch steps, bare feet on the wood, Richard laughing mid-sentence, Micah leaning gently into him. There was no yellow hat in the picture, just two people who had found each other. Outside, the wind rustled gently through the hedges, and the porch light cast a warm glow across the quiet lawn. It was the kind of stillness Richard used to find cold, like a vacuum waiting to echo back at him. But not anymore. Now the house breathed differently. It breathed with second chances. Micah's footsteps padded down the hallway. Laughter came from a late-night TV show in the next room. Somewhere, a kettle started to whistle. And for the first time in a long, long time, the house didn't feel like a monument to distance and wealth. It felt like home. Maybe that's all a second chance is. Not a do-over, not a grand gesture, just a boy who whispers, "Don't go in there," and a man who finally decides to listen. Thank you for listening to this story. If it moved you, don't forget to subscribe, leave us a comment, and share this with someone who still believes that even the smallest act of kindness can change a life. You never know who's watching from the other side of the fence.